News Radio 840 WHAS. Good Sunday morning. Bob Sokoler, the Louisville Real Estate Show, with you till the top of the hour. Thank you for joining us, folks. And with us, we've got great questions, but we also have great people with us. We've got Cora Henderson. Now, Cora happens to be the head honcho, or close to being the head honcho, over at Pitt and Frank Attorneys, LLC. You can reach Cora and her folks at 895-9900. Also here, Brad Lawler, owner of Home Team Inspection Service and also Team Bug Out. They come in like a team and they leave like a team because they get the job done quickly. And now number 9 years in a row, number one. 9 years in a row now. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you very much.
You can reach Brad and his team at 844-411-TEAM. And if you're thinking of selling or buying, listen, just give me a call. You can reach me on my cell phone, free, no obligation estimate. We can help you get out and sell that place if that's what you want. My direct cell, 502-376-5483, or go to bobsellslouisville.com. Coming up a little later on today's show, a common heating hack. I'm telling you, many of us do this, but it ends up wasting us more money than it saves, and Brad will have a hand in helping us in explaining that. Also, a reminder that if you'd like to see a rebroadcast of today's show, it not only just hear it, but see it, go to LouisvilleAnswers.com. That's LouisvilleAnswers.com. All right, we'll start with Cora Henderson over at Pitt and Frank. And Lee wrote in this question, Cora. It's an interesting problem. Lee has a rental property, many of our listeners may, and the renter just recently signed a lease option contract. So a lease option to buy contract. Lee says he went to an attorney and had the attorney draw up the contract. And he says it's all in one contract. He says now he's being told by a friend that it needs to be in two separate contracts, one for the lease and one for the option to buy. He's wondering, did the attorney make a mistake, and why should it be in two separate contracts? Can you illuminate?
I would be happy to illuminate.
Yes.
Very brightly. Okay, so yes, great question. And first of all, I commend Lee on going to an attorney and seeking legal advice on that legal document to be drafted. So I can concur with the attorney that drafted it. We too drafted in one document, and here's why. I think oftentimes when you have related instances, in this case, the lease and then the option to purchase, and you separate those into different documents, they aren't incorporated with one another. Now, there's a number of things that can create inconsistencies and concerns for us. And of course, what if can one stand alone by the other? I mean, there's a lot of questions, I think, surrounding doing different documents. I prefer, and I'm a believer of having that embedded in one, again, because all the terms are there. There's no confusion. There's no missing documents. There's no room for misinterpretation. Also, just to explain for the listeners here, the lease, of course, is just as it would be anytime you lease something, it's a rental agreement. But the option to purchase, it's usually for a fee called an option fee that they would have the right to purchase at a later date under certain terms that have already been agreed upon. So they would exercise that right, that option to purchase according to the terms of that agreement that is included in their rental agreement. That can be contrasted with what's called a lease purchase and even a contract for deed, which are two totally separate and distinct concepts. So I definitely want to clarify that for the listeners. But again, lease option, love having that in one solid document.
And the one thing to stay away from, I would suspect, is by drawing it up yourself if you're not an attorney.
Absolutely. Right? And there's a number of other considerations. Do we need to run a title search on the property? Are we worried about, taking a property subject to any liens or encumbrances? Do we understand the obligations and the duties that we're binding ourselves to by signing that contract? And also just kind of understanding there's something else called equitable title, which is not legal title, but it's equitable title, and it can change the position of the parties. So just lots of good room for discussion while you would engage an attorney and not go at it alone. Don't fall into the trap of Googling forms.
That is a problem. You heard it here, and you probably already know this if you had to deal with it. A reminder for everybody, if you'd like to see what sellers are saying about us, actually some interviews we've done, go to LouisvilleSellersTalk.com. All right, we move over to Brad Lawler, Home Team Inspection. Sarah listens to us all the time. She sent us an email saying she owns a home with a Federal Pacific panel in it. And she says she's planning on selling her home this year. Good for her. And she says she heard us talk about the panel problems, but she doesn't know what the cost is to replace the panel. So, Brad, let's review for everybody who You go down to your wherever your electrical panel is, folks, and just take a look and see if the words Federal Pacific, or is it Stablock as well? If
Yeah,
it's on there, yeah,
Stablock is what they're called. I don't know that their Stablock is printed on the outside, but they would see Federal Pacific on the outside. But when you open it up, the
yeah.
telltale sign is that you see very bright orange stickers on the ends of each of the circuit breakers. And those breakers, rather than being turned in like they are in every other manufactured panel, when they're turned on, they are pointed to the outside of the panel.
With a Federal
So
Pacific panel,
with the
to
Federal
the
Pacific
outside.
panel,
Yeah,
right? So
right.
you'll see the switches
Yeah.
going pointing to the outside, and they're bright orange tips on them. Now, the challenge with Federal Pacific was they stopped making these in the late 70s. This is the last time that they sold them in the U.S. So most of these panels are going on. I mean, some of them are already over 50 years old. So they've gotten to the end of their usable lifespan. For a distribution panel. And the problem with Federal Pacific is the breakers don't necessarily trip when they overheat. They just stay open, which then causes the heat to travel back up the wires in the home. So you get melted wires, you get scorching, you get overheating, and potentially there's a fire hazard. So the Federal Pacific stopped selling these panels in the U.S. in the late 70s. They still sell them in
Canada.
Yeah, they're
Canada,
different, but they
yeah.
still sell them there. You cannot get replacement parts for them. So really the only option left is to go ahead and replace a panel. Now, I'm not an electrician, so I don't know, I don't replace the panels, but what I've been told is you're probably looking at, depending on the size of those panels, you're probably looking at $1,200 to $1,500 in that range to replace them. Any panel, whether it's Federal Pacific or Zinsco or just any of the modern brands, a 50-year span on those is a pretty good life. And, we do have to replace components like that in our homes. So Federal Pacific is something you definitely want to, before you put a home on the market, have an electrician come in and evaluate it. It may be something that you want to go ahead, make that switch, let everybody know, hey, you've got a brand new, square D panel now in place of the old one that has been there, and consider that, an upgrade.
Did I hear that you can buy a rebuilt Federal Pacific breaker, but they're like $100 or more?
You can, yeah.
Yeah.
You can find sources for them on the internet. It's not a great idea, but
Yeah.
yes, the parts are available out there.
And Bob, if I may,
Yes,
about the
please.
Federal Pacific, I get
Yes.
a lot of calls on this. And
Oh.
I would not only urge your caller, but other sellers that are looking to potentially list their home, have that fixed before you even list it. Because even if you are lucky enough to have a buyer that waives repairs or even inspections for that matter, if they're getting a loan, an appraiser is going to automatically pick that up as a safety issue, and they're going to require that be corrected and replaced and repaired prior to that loan getting approved. So I see it happen all the time because it is a true safety issue.
I did not know that an appraiser, other than doing you're sure that's not just like a VA or FHA appraiser? Normal conventional home appraisers are going to look at the panels? Really?
I think typically you'll see that in some of the different type of loan products, understandably so, but really it's at that appraiser's discretion. I mean, if they are supposed to mark things for the lender as safety issues, in other words, you got to think the lender's, using that as collateral for hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And if there's a risk of that home catching fire and that collateral going poof up in the air, they're going to want that mitigated prior to loaning that money. I mean,
All right.
Brad, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what we see a lot of. We would typically just let everyone know you need to have that panel evaluated by an electrician because, again, the house is 50 years old at that point, at least, if not older. So you may have other circumstances that need to be addressed at the same time that panel is being changed out. It may not just be simply changing the Federal Pacific panel. You're going to have to do the other upgrades, like installing the GFCI at the same time. So some of those things are going to cascade, along the way as those upgrades are done.
All right. You can read about our reviews. We're really very proud of our reviews. Go to LouisvilleZillow.com or LouisvilleGoogle.com. That's to read our Louisville Zillow and LouisvilleGoogle.com reviews for the Sokoler team. All right. Over to Coro for at Pitt and Frank LLC. Andrea is a newer real estate agent. So congratulations, Andrea, for being in the new business here and here in the Louisville area. And she sent us an interesting question. Cora, this is interesting. She said, and Brad, you're going to love this as well. She says, in the multiple listing service, in the agent notes section. So, folks, this is an area that is visible only to agents in the industry, that the seller can refuse up to 2 home inspectors. And Andrea says she hadn't seen that before, and she's saying, well, why is that there, and is that legal? Refuse up to 2 home inspectors. I know why, but Cora, from a legal answer, how would you define that? And I'll give you mine, and Brad will take.
I would love to hear yours, Bob. So Andrea, congrats. So happy to have you in this industry. And we need a lot of good leaders, certainly, and good professionals. So happy to have you aboard. Now, in regards to the decline of 2 professionals there, I think that there are some experienced agents that have unfortunately suffered through some of those inspections to where to say it nicely, alarmist, right? And to basically saying the whole house needs to be torn down and rebuilt. And so does that at that moment that inspection comes through, not only lose a potential purchaser, like they're likely to terminate on the advice of that inspector that says, hey, everything's wrong with this house, run, when in fact, 99 other inspectors may disagree. But then does that create a stigma against that property moving forward because that inspection has been done? Does that create other seller's disclosure and misrepresentation liability if all of that isn't mitigated properly? And I can kind of go down a rabbit hole on that, but it sounds to me like somebody got burned. And it's probably that agent, again, just having that seasoned and experience and maybe had a transaction where somebody got burned and saying, I'm not going to let that happen to one of my clients again. And as far as is it legal, I like that language a whole lot more than you shall not use or cannot use XYZ. We don't want to name people. No. But having the right to refuse up to 2, I think we're probably in a much safer area. So what do you think, Bob?
Yeah, there are 2 home inspectors in the area. We've got great home inspectors, including Home Team. But there are 2 who, those of us who are seasoned agents, know that they cause problems. One of them, who writes a report that you can't read and who once used his son to help him, and that created a problem, which I won't go into on the air. It is a family show. And the second issue with the second inspector is that he will, in many cases, we believe, go in and deliberately attack a home for no reason whatsoever, then walk up to the buyer and say, listen, this home is not worth buying, but if you use me again for your next home, I'll give you a discount on the purchase. We've got that documented. We know that that's happened. And so many of us seasoned agents just simply say, listen, we don't want to use them. Now, I haven't used that terminology, or we can refuse up to 2, but I'm really thinking we should start doing that. Brad, thoughts?
Well, I don't want to pile on. It's a brotherhood and a sisterhood out there, I will have to say. But there's 150 licensed home inspectors in the market, so there's lots of choices.
Right.
And I would definitely suggest that anybody talk to family members and other people who have gotten a great home inspection experience and get referrals from them. Now, as for an agent rejecting a home inspector, hopefully I'm not one of the guys that's on anybody's list out there.
You are not.
But I also understand that it is a real matter of trust because, Home Team, we do more inspections than anyone else in this marketplace, but it's not just the inspections. For us, we want to get the buyer and all other parties to the closing table. That's really what we're aiming for. And that's really what my team, that's what we're all about. So hopefully all of the home inspectors out there would believe that same thing. We're just trying to help be part of the process, not a stumbling block or an obstacle that has to be, either jumped over or gotten around.
Got it. We're going to take a break. When we come back, the common home heating hack that you may be doing right now, but wastes more money than it saves. Yes, it is. Continuing with us, we've got Cora Henderson, who is one of the head folks over at Pitt & Frank LLC. You can reach the folks over there at 895-9900. Also, Brad Lawler, who is the owner of the Home Team Inspection Service. You can reach Brad, and also for his team bug out service for getting rid of pests. 844-411-TEAM. And you can reach me if you're thinking of selling your home this year, next year, or beyond, or thinking about buying. I can help you with myself and my team. I'll come out free, no obligation analysis, and come up with a plan that will help you get on the market and sold. You can reach me at 376-5483 or go to bobsellslouisville.com. We are back in a moment on News Radio 840 WHAS. News Radio 840 WHAS, Bob Sokoler, the Louisville Real Estate Show. We're here with you till the top of the hour. Continuing with us, Brad Lawler, owner of Home Team Inspection Service and Team Bugout. 844-411-TEAM is Brad's number. Also, Cora Henderson, who's one of the top folks over at Pitt and Frank Attorneys, LLC. You can pick the closing attorney that you want. Pitt and Frank is spectacular. You heard Barbara Corcoran just a few minutes ago, Shark Tank fame, and many other things. I understand she made an appearance on Saturday Night Live. Not this last night, but the week before. So good for Barbara. She endorses us, and we consider her a mentor, and we thank her. You can reach me if you're thinking of selling now or in the future, or to buy. You can reach me for a free, no obligation analysis. That's Bob Sokoler at 502-376-5483, or go to bobsellslouisville.com. Well, we could not believe this. Actually, this happened to a client of mine a number of months ago, where she had closed off a couple of vents, and I contacted Brad. So the heat or air conditioning is on. You're not using some of the room, folks. Let's say there's some upstairs rooms. The kids have moved out. You close down the vents in the room, thinking, okay, I don't have to air condition those rooms anymore. But it can be a costly mistake. So, Brad, give us a one-line synopsis of why.
Well, the reason is because the system is tuned to move a specific amount of air. And when you close those vents off and you close those rooms off, you do not have the amount of air flowing back through the furnace. So the furnace runs very inefficiently. So you're actually probably causing it to cycle off and on more than you need to if you had those vents and registers open in those other rooms.
The report that we had also says that it can create duct pressure and the potential problems.
Right.
That also closed vents can strain HVAC system components, and then also cause the HVAC system, whether it's heat or air, to run more than it would normally. And this is the concern I had. It can reduce air circulation, which could lead to mold growth in the ducts and maybe in the rooms where there's no air circulation.
Yeah, it's called the problem with air stagnation is what they refer to that as, because the air just sits in the room. There's no way for it to leave. So yeah, if you've got moisture in that area, it just stays. It can't be conditioned by the furnace or the air conditioning unit.
So remember that if you've got vents closed off, if you think you're doing yourself a favor, you may be hurting yourself and spending more money. So hopefully those are some tips you will take to heart. If you're trying to sell your home in the past and you had no offers, you're wondering what the heck happened. Maybe you're thinking no buyers out there. Okay, I got a solution for you. I've got buyers. All you need to do is go to bobhasbuyers.com. That's bobhasbuyers.com. Fill out the form, and I will be right there to communicate with you and get moving forward. Back to the questions. We're in our email version of our show. This is for Cora. Joel writes in that he had heard the past week that Jay Leno filed for conservatorship from his wife, Mavis. So Joel is saying, so what exactly is conservatorship? And should Joel look into it? And how does it compare to an estate plan or a will? This is a really good question, timely, especially with my buddy Jay Leno, who had to do this with Mavis. Go ahead.
Yes, Joel, I sadly saw that news too. And they had been married quite a long time. And my understanding, again, I don't know them personally, like Bob may have intimate knowledge, but I think she has memory issues and maybe suffering in that regard. And so the conservatorship, I would very much say, is like a guardianship. I think conservatorship probably, if you are a People.com watcher, got a bad rap when you think of the whole Britney Spears and her dad, getting conservatorship. But typically, at least here locally, we think of it as more of like a guardianship, whether it be somebody that has lost their memory, they're incapacitated for other reasons, or certainly if they are deemed, mentally or physically disabled and incapable of making decisions for themselves, whether that be due to their health decisions or incapable of making financial decisions, then a court would hear their case and decide whether or not this person who would like to be nominated for to be conservative or guardian over their loved one will be approved by the judge, or if they need to get a guardian ad litem, some disinterested third party to make those determinations, or even to serve on their behalf. So, are there ways to prevent that? I think there is a place and a need for conservatorship and guardianship, and you would want to look to state law for those distinctions and speak to a professional if that is something that you may be interested in. But just estate planning in general, other things that you can at least try to mitigate in advance of something rising to that level is a good general power of attorney. So oftentimes we'll worry about like what's going to happen when we die. Let's have a will in place. And while that is very important, and of course trust can be an important vehicle for certain types of asset preservation and whatnot, durable power of attorneys are when we're still alive, but we need someone else to step in and make decisions for us. Whether it's a convenience issue, they can be effective immediately, or they can be drawn up in a manner in which they're springing and they're not effective. That person doesn't have the right to step in until we're incapacitated mentally or otherwise. Let's say we're in the hospital in a coma, or we are in a memory care unit. And so oftentimes these general power of attorney are very inexpensive to get done in advance. You do have to have capacity when you execute it, nominating that other person. So you want, again, to do it in advance. It's a planning tool. But then once you need it, all you have to do is present that. It's going to be broad and sweeping powers, financial, healthcare, selling and buying real property. If properly drafted, all those areas will be touched.
And that's important. You mentioned you have to have the capacity to sign. So don't wait till your loved ones don't have that capacity, because then it's too late. And that's
absolutely. And the POA, of course, terminates at death, but it can be a useful tool until that time whenever those types of issues arise. But certainly the next step up, depending on that situation, could be guardianship court. So we would want to look to state law and that fact pattern to determine if they would be good candidates for that.
A reminder, if you want to sign up for our newest newsletter, this week's topic is when should you consider a new home? Go to welovelouisville.com. That's welovelouisville.com. Brett Lawler, Home Team Inspection. Tim wrote us an email at our email address, bob@wesellouisville.com. He said he's finishing his basement, and a friend of his said he should probably have his basement tested and retested, rather, for radon. Tim's wondering why. He says it didn't have any dangerous radon levels when he first bought the home, so why have it retested? Again, radon, colorless, odorless gas, second leading cause of lung cancer among smokers, and the primary lead of cancer among non-smokers. So, Brad, do you retest?
Yeah. Well, it depends on what he did to the house. So just refinishing a basement, he may not need to, but the radon levels inside a home are going to fluctuate throughout the year. When it's wintertime and wetter weather, they tend to be a little bit more elevated. I've got a continuous monitor in my house, so I can see what trends are over the last several years, and they're always a little bit higher in the winter. But if you make significant modifications to the house that tightens it up, say you put in new doors, you put in new windows, you re-insulate it, and you make the house tighter, or you put in a new HVAC system, all of those would be causes to retest the radon levels to make sure that tightening the house didn't raise the levels of the radon inside the house, because radon comes up through the cracks and crevices. It comes up through basement floors. It comes up through, the slab, through crawl spaces, and anything that oftentimes it will just, percolate out of windows, leaky windows, the same way that it comes up through the floor. But once you put in well-crafted, well-insulated windows, you may be bottling up that radon inside the house. And the only way to remove it is through a mechanical system that actually, basically sucks the radon out from under the slab and puts it out above the line of the gutters.
One caveat, in addition to the cracks and crevices that it comes up through, it's also the sump pump system that it comes up through. So keep an eye on it. There's a reason you might want to.
That's a good tip. That
comes through. Yeah, we'll come around those crocks very, very easily because they're not sealed up.
And then what about if it's a walkout basement? Is that better than, let's say, a non-walkout as far as radon goes?
So the crazy thing about it is you can live in a house with a walkout, and then your neighbor has a house with a walkout. You've got an elevated level of radon, your neighbor does not. So we have found elevated levels of radon in every type of construction imaginable, including, crazy enough, a third floor condo that had a radon reading above 30 picocuries per liter. So very, very elevated. But it's what they call it stack effect. So it's the way that air moves throughout a house, and that's how the condo is getting it, because the HVAC system was actually pumping it up into this third floor condo. So, mitigation of that, I'll leave that to the experts in that. I just do the testing and evaluation there. But yeah, it can be found in all sorts of different construction. No one type is preferable over another.
If you are thinking about selling your home, we have a free, no obligation booklet that has hundreds of useful tips. If you want a copy, it's free, no obligation. As I said, send me an email, bob@WeSellLouisville.com, and put selling tips in the subject line. And by the way, if you're thinking about selling your home, we also have Brad's home inspection, what to expect booklet. Again, just send me an email, bob@WeSellLouisville.com, and we'll go and help you. Back over to Cora Hannah. This will be our last question, I think. Hannah recently moved into a new subdivision in Oldham County. Is happy with her home. The only problem, she says, a neighbor, one of them, is very noisy, throws parties that go into the early morning hours. She's wondering, is there something legally and anonymously that Hannah can do to attempt to stop the parties from keeping her up at night? Cora.
Ooh, great question. And I love the OC, so shout out to Oldham County. So a couple of things come to mind. The first one that jumps out to me is a legal concept called nuisance, which, essentially makes me wonder if their neighbors' activities are interfering with their use and enjoyment of their own property. So as far as how do we anonymously report that? Or what are the next steps to kind of discover if there's a way to make this go away without knocking on their door saying, hey, you're a little too loud. So, certainly you can contact your local authorities, your local police and everything, and ask for that anonymity. And they'll probably say, well, do you want to file a report or do you not? But at least you can be aware of what your options are with that type of complaint. Secondly, you may want to look to your HOA restrictions. So if you're in a subdivision, there could be some restrictions on certain noise levels, and could be if there's parking on the street, if they're having parties, and maybe there's something where the board or the HOA president could get involved, again, anonymously on behalf of the neighborhood in order to keep that peaceful use and enjoyment to the property that you so desire and want as a homeowner, right?
Mm-hmm. No, it makes sense to me, at least. I hope for them.
And then the last option, of course, if it becomes really bad, again, I don't think it's anonymously, but you can always seek legal counsel about a nuisance claim.
Got it.
So that's a better option than going on one of those social media kind of apps and
Facebook.
put everybody on blast out there.
That would definitely not be. I suppose you could have a fake account, and you could be like, "Hey, do you know who lives at 123 Main Street? Tell them to shut up."
It would not be anonymously. If, by the way, you want to see some of the videos that we produce, and we have a lot of videos that we're producing every week, head over to LouisvilleHomesTV.com. Again, I'll go slow on that one. LouisvilleHomesTV.com. And take a look at what we've got out there. There's a lot of content. All right, we're out of time. My thanks to Cora Henderson, who is the head honcho, one of them at Pitt and Frank LLC. You can reach Cora Henderson and her group at 895-9900. Also, Brad Lawler, owner of Home Team Inspection Service. You can reach Brad at 844-411-TEAM for Home Team Inspection and for Team Bug Out. And if you're thinking of buying or selling a home now or in the near future, we would love to help you. You can reach me for a free, no obligation estimate of what it's involved, what it takes to get your home sold, what it's worth. Go to bobsellslouisville.com or just give me a call at 376-5483. We're out of time. See you next Sunday at News Radio 840 WHAS.